5 stewards' investigations, 2 penalties, 1 car flipped upside down, and somehow, the most heated moment at the 2026 Miami Grand Prix is a white line in the pit lane and a driver trying to limp home on a broken car. Kimi Antonelli crosses the line first at the Miami International Autodrome, winning from Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. That is his 3rd straight victory from his first 3 pole positions, a record in Formula One history. And on any other weekend, that is the story. It is not the story, because within hours of the checkered flag, the FIA releases 5 separate decision papers. Max Verstappen gets 5 seconds for crossing the pit exit line. Charles Leclerc gets 20 seconds for leaving the track on the final lap. Valtteri Bottas gets a drive-through for pit lane speeding. Isaac Hadjar has already been thrown out of qualifying before the race even starts. And Liam Lawson, whose car flipped Pierre Gasly upside down at turn 17, gets nothing at all. That was May 2026. 6 months earlier, Lewis Hamilton left the track multiple times at the Singapore Grand Prix with a brake problem. Same type of offence. Same stewards rejecting the same mechanical excuse. His penalty was 5 seconds. Leclerc's was 20. 4 times harsher for what looks, on paper, like the same thing. How does the same governing body, applying the same rules, land on a punishment 4 times more severe for the same offence in less than half a year? The answer takes us inside the stewards' room at the Miami International Autodrome, back to a heated meeting in Qatar, and into a fight between the drivers and the FIA that is still far from over. Lap 1 of the Miami Grand Prix is already chaos. Leclerc jumps poleman Antonelli into turn 1 and grabs the lead. Verstappen locks up, then spins on the exit of turn 2, pulling off a full 360-degree save that keeps him in the race. Hamilton and Franco Colapinto make contact at the first corner, damaging Hamilton's bargeboard and hurting his entire afternoon. By lap 6, the safety car is out. Hadjar clips the inside wall at turn 14, breaking his front suspension. On the same lap, Lawson's Red Bull suffers a gearbox failure under braking for turn 17. He locks up, slides into Gasly's line, and sends the Alpine barrel rolling through the gravel. Both drivers are out. The safety car is deployed. And during that safety car period, Verstappen makes his pit stop. He comes out on hard tyres, and on his way back onto the circuit, his front left tyre crosses the solid white pit exit line. The stewards see it, they note it, and they do nothing. Not in the moment, not during the race. They say they will look at it after the checkered flag, citing limited video evidence at the time. This is where the first layer of the Miami Rose starts to form. The pit exit line is a black and white issue. Either the tyre crosses the line or it does not. There is no judgment call. There is no grey area. There is no excuse that changes it. A car either stays inside the pit, exit markings, or it does not. And yet the stewards decide they need more camera angles before they can confirm what the TV cameras already showed millions of people watching at home. The investigation sits open for the entire race. 50 laps pass. The checkered flag falls. The podium ceremony happens. The media pen interviews happen. And only then do the stewards confirm that yes, the outside of Verstappen's front left tyre did cross the outside of the solid white pit exit line. When the verdict finally comes, it is 5 seconds added to Verstappen's race time. He finishes 8.9 seconds clear of Hamilton in 6th place. His position does not change. The penalty means nothing in practice. The broadcast reaction is instant. The decision is called weak, pathetic, and pointless. Commentators across multiple countries ask why the stewards needed hours to settle what was clear on the first replay. Verstappen himself does not even talk about the penalty after the race. His comments focus on Red Bull's strategy and how the early switch to hard compound tyres cost him places through the middle stint. The 5-second penalty barely counts as a footnote. What does register is his battle through the midfield, where Sainz accuses him over team radio of pushing him off the track at turn 17. The radio message is blunt. He thinks he can do whatever he wants because he is racing the midfield. Verstappen shrugs it off. The midfield is a jungle. The stewards look at the incident. No further action. That is the backdrop when the Leclerc situation unfolds on the final lap. It is the final lap of the race, lap 57, and Leclerc is chasing Piastri for the final podium spot. He pushes through turn 3, loses the rear end, spins at high speed, and clips the wall on the inside of the corner. The impact damages his front left suspension and his steering arm. His Ferrari cannot take right-hand corners cleanly anymore, and there are still 14 turns between him and the finish line. So Leclerc does what any driver would do. He cuts the chicanes. He goes straight through turn 4, turn 8, turn 11, and turn 15, nursing the broken car back to the line. George Russell passes him at turn 17. Verstappen passes him at the final corner. He crosses the line in 6th place. Then the stewards open 3 separate investigations into his final lap alone. One for leaving the track multiple times, one for driving in an unsafe condition, one for contact with Russell at turn 17. The contact investigation is dropped. Both drivers call it a minor racing incident. The unsafe car investigation is also dropped, with the stewards finding no sign of a clear mechanical issue from the outside of the car. And the track limits investigation results in a drive-through penalty, turned into 20 seconds because it is handed down after the race. The steward's reasoning is cold. Leclerc left the track on several occasions without a good reason. The fact that he had some kind of mechanical issue did not count as a good reason. They rule he gained a lasting advantage by leaving the track, because cutting those corners let him finish the race instead of parking the car at turn 4. 20 seconds is added to his time. He drops from 6th to 8th, behind his own team mate Hamilton and behind Colapinto. Ferrari loses key constructors' points. Leclerc's own response is striking. He does not attack the stewards. He does not fight the penalty. He takes full blame for the spin, calls the mistake unacceptable, and owns the result entirely. That is exactly what makes this so awkward for the FIA. The driver they just hit with a 20-second penalty is the one defending the process. The criticism is coming from everywhere else, because the comparison everyone jumps to is Singapore 2025. Lewis Hamilton, driving for Mercedes at the time, leaves the track multiple times during the race while dealing with a brake issue. The stewards reject his mechanical excuse, just as they reject Leclerc's steering damage in Miami. Hamilton's penalty is 5 seconds. Leclerc's is 20. The FIA's defense is based on the rules. Hamilton's offence was handled under Article 33.3 of the Sporting Regulations and Article 12.2.1 of the International Sporting Code. Leclerc's is handled under Article B, 1.8.6. Different articles carry different default penalty scales. The rules set a different starting point for how harsh the punishment should be. That is technically true, and it completely misses the point. From the outside, and from inside most team offices on the pit wall, the real-world offence is the same. A driver with a mechanical problem leaves the track multiple times. The stewards reject the mechanical excuse. The only difference is the article number in the penalty paper. One driver gets 5 seconds, the other gets 20. And neither penalty changes the final race results in any real way, because Hamilton finished well clear of the car behind him, and Leclerc was already losing places on the final lap anyway. I mean, think about that for a second. The same governing body, the same rulebook, the same type of offence. One penalty is a slap on the wrist. The other costs a team constructors points. And the reason is a difference in article numbers that no fan, no commentator, and frankly no team boss has any reason to know by heart. The driver who has been making exactly this argument for the past 18 months is Carlos Sainz. As chairman of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, Sainz led a push at the Qatar Grand Prix in November 2025 that turned into the most direct clash between the drivers and the FIA in years. The message from the drivers was clear. There had been too much division between themselves, the FIA and the stewards. Too much confusion. The driving standards guidelines had created more problems than they solved. There was barely any room left for racing incidents, with everything treated as either a penalty or nothing at all. No grey area, no common sense. Russell, as the GPDA director, pushed the money argument. A global sport that brings in billions in revenue should be able to afford permanent stewards. Rotating volunteers, no matter how skilled, cannot deliver the consistency a sport of this size demands. The GPDA wanted 3 things: permanent paid stewards at every race, post-race hearings when evidence is not complete, and a full rewrite of the driving standards guidelines that had been causing confusion since they were brought in. This was not the first time the drivers had pushed back. A year earlier, in November 2024, all 20 drivers signed a joint GPDA letter challenging the FIA president's tone and asking where fine money was actually going. The idea at the time was that fine money could fund permanent paid stewards instead. The Qatar 2025 meeting was the next step in a fight that had been building for over 12 months. Ben Sulayem's response to the permanent stewards demand was blunt. The FIA does not have the budget. Stewards are volunteers, not employees. And if the drivers want to change that, they are welcome to fund it themselves. The post-race hearing request, however, was granted, and Miami 2026 is proof that the new process works. The stewards waited on purpose for more camera angles before ruling on the Verstappen pit exit. They held a full post-race hearing before penalizing Leclerc. The process Sainz and Russell pushed for in Qatar is exactly what played out under the floodlights in Miami. The process worked, the outcome did not. And that is the gap the FIA still cannot close. Because the 2025 season was already a long list of mixed calls before the drivers ever sat down in Qatar. At Silverstone, Piastri received 10 seconds for hard braking ahead of a safety car restart while leading the British Grand Prix. It cost him the win. Russell did the same thing in Canada earlier that year. No penalty. The double standard was clear enough that rival team bosses were calling it out in public. The FIA held that the cases were different. The drivers disagreed. At the Spanish Grand Prix, Verstappen received 3 penalty points for a crash with Russell. The only driver punished that harshly all season for a racing incident. The fallout between them was ugly, with Verstappen making it clear in the driver briefing that whatever respect existed between them was gone. At Zandvoort, the stewards hit Sainz with 10 seconds and 2 penalty points for contact with Lawson at the Tarzan corner. Williams filed a review request, and in a rare reversal, the penalty points were wiped. The time penalty stood. At Interlagos, Piastri picked up 10 seconds in a 3-car clash with Antonelli and Leclerc, a decision widely seen as either a racing incident or, at most, a 5-second offence. And in Las Vegas, both McLarens were thrown out for too much plank wear, with the result not made final until most fans had already gone to bed. The part-time stewarding model had already taken another hit earlier that year when veteran steward Derek Warwick was pulled at short notice over a paid pundit interview, and former driver steward Johnny Herbert had been removed in January 2025 over a clashing media role. Each of those decisions had a solid basis in the rules. Each of them, taken on its own, made sense. And together, they painted a picture of a stewarding system that was following rules without applying them the same way twice. Even Leclerc, before the Qatar meeting, had spotted the heart of the problem. The sport is really sticking to the book, and that makes it hard to have common sense sometimes in certain situations. For 2026, the FIA did revise the driving standards guidelines. A wheel lock-up during an overtake is now treated less harshly than before. A car forcing another off the track in a reckless, dangerous, or deliberate way carries a minimum 10-second stop-and-go penalty, with a possible ban from the race or a one-race suspension for deliberate intent. The blue flag rules have been reviewed. The post-race hearing process is now the preferred route when evidence is not complete. Those are real changes. They are a real response to driver concerns. And none of them fix the core problem that Miami just exposed again, which is that 2 similar offences handled under different article numbers produce wildly different penalties, and the FIA has no way to bring them in line. Meanwhile, the rest of the Miami penalty sheet tells its own story about the sheer number of decisions the stewards face in a single weekend. Antonelli picks up a 5-second penalty in the sprint race for 4 track limits breaches, with the final one coming on the last lap. An easy 4th place, 3 points thrown away to his biggest title rival over a track limits breach on the final lap. Bottas receives a drive-through for going over the pit lane speed limit by 9.5 km/h, the result of a known steering wheel button issue on the Cadillac that failed to turn on the limiter properly. Hadjar is thrown out of qualifying after the technical checks find his Red Bull floor sticking out 2 mm beyond the allowed limits on both sides, then pushed back further to a pit lane start after park-firm part changes. And then there is Lawson. His gearbox fails under braking at turn 17 on lap 6. He slides into Gasly's line, makes contact with the rear of the Alpine, and sends it flipping upside down through the gravel trap. The car comes to rest on its roll hoop. Gasly climbs out unhurt, but the image of an upside-down Alpine sliding across the gravel is the most dramatic moment of the entire weekend. The stewards investigate and clear Lawson, accepting that the gearbox failure left him in neutral with anti-stall turned on, making it a mechanical failure rather than driver error. Gasly walks away unhurt and frustrated, but his anger is aimed at the lost points, not at Lawson. No penalty for a car flipped upside down, 20 seconds for a driver limping home on a broken steering arm, 5 seconds for a tyre crossing a white line, and a 2 mm floor breach that wipes out an entire qualifying session. So yeah, not great. No team boss spoke out against the stewards after Miami. Ferrari's view of the weekend was that it was brutal, but there was no fight against the Leclerc penalty. Red Bull owned the Hadjar floor error as their own mistake. Mercedes and McLaren focused their post-race talk on strategy and car speed, not on the officiating. The silence says a lot. Not because the teams agree with every decision, but because the system gives them no way to fight penalties in real time, and because the bond between teams and the FIA is already stretched thin enough that nobody wants to be the one who pushes too hard on a weekend where the process technically followed the rules. The GPDA has not put out a statement about the Miami 2026 penalties. The next chance for a formal response is the Canadian Grand Prix, where any right of review window for Leclerc's penalty will have closed, and where the pre-race media day could see Russell or Sainz asked straight out about the Hamilton comparison. If Ferrari files a right of review challenging the 20-second penalty, the FIA will have to defend the gap in severity on the record. If they do not, the comparison sits there with no answer. And every future track limits case will be measured against it. As of this week, the 20-second penalty stands. The 5-second penalty stands. The comparison between them is the only thing that has changed. The FIA logged 509 incident referrals across the 2025 season. 405 of those were looked into. 252 resulted in no further action. 153 resulted in penalties. The 5 or 6 cases that shaped public opinion made up less than 1% of that workload. And yet those 5 or 6 cases are the reason 20 drivers sat in a room in Qatar and told the governing body that the system is broken. Miami 2026 adds another case to that list. The FIA's stewarding process is doing exactly what the drivers asked it to do. It is collecting full evidence before ruling. It is holding post-race hearings. It is following the driving standards guidelines as revised. And it is still producing penalties that, when placed side by side, make no sense to the people watching.